Welcome to this episode of the Skip Meetings podcast, the podcast for curious professionals embracing the future of business events. My name is Andrea Doyle, and I am the executive editor of Skip Meetings. In this episode titled Scott Beck, Embracing Change, I have the pleasure of speaking with Scott, the incoming president and CEO of the San Francisco Travel Association. We talk about things like the challenges he will have to overcome in this role in San Francisco, a city that has not fully recovered from the pandemic. How the three cities he has been involved with in his career, Salt Lake City, Toronto, and San Francisco, understand the impact meetings and conventions have. We chat about the importance of content at today's meetings and conventions and how he wants to attract groups to San Francisco that feature thought leaders from various fields. We talk about the things the industry can do to decrease trash and decrease its impact on the environment, and how his 4 daughters have helped him look at the world differently. I hope you enjoy listening to this conversation, and I invite you to check out other episodes of the podcast. You can find them on our website or by subscribing through your favorite podcast service. Yeah, so you're incoming president and CEO of the San Francisco Travel Association, and
That's correct.
Assume that role at the end of this month.
That's correct. Yeah, I'm lucky that my first week on the job is with the team in DC and New York visiting clients and media. So I get to be in an environment that's very familiar to me, which is out talking to clients. So my first official day in San Francisco is November 6th.
Okay, great. And when do you wrap up at Toronto?
October 27th.
Okay.
Yeah, I felt both an obligation to wind things up here in a very positive way, but also to get started in San Francisco, as quickly and as soon as I could. So,
all right. So you know what? Why the change? I was surprised because you were with Toronto for 4 years. We met during Destinations International. You were influential in getting that to meet in Toronto last year.
I think it was I think twofold. First and foremost, I have always considered myself, and one of the roles I have is that as a father of 4 daughters to be probably the most important part of who I am and what I do. And it's been hard to be away from the family for 4.5 years. And I think it was something that the pandemic certainly amplified just because of the situation of all that was around the pandemic. But the past 6 months, there's been issues and things that have really driven home to me the importance of being a father and being engaged in my daughter's lives, and that was a really big part of it. My wife's family's in the East Bay. She has a family in San Ramon. And so when the opportunity came up, it wasn't on any level, it wasn't looking to leave Toronto. It was really an opportunity that was also a good career move. Our industry and the one that I happen to love is destination sales and marketing, and I will say that the destination of San Francisco has certainly been important to me. It was my first big city ever when I was a young man, 9 with my mother. That's where she took me to have my first big city urban experience, and I think the iconic nature of what San Francisco is and what it represents in terms of travel is important. So I felt that was also a really unique opportunity, and one that some people shook their head and said, aren't you aware of what's going on in San Francisco? And it's like I'm keenly aware, and I'm going in eyes wide open. But I do believe in this, I think, important aspect of what our industry does. Having social ambition is a very, very important part of, I think, a city that I want to live in. But you have to have economic ambition to deliver on that. And I think that's one of the important things about our industry, especially in a destination like San Francisco, where travel is the biggest industry in the community. And that's a really big opportunity, I think. So
you're from California originally?
No, I'm from Utah originally.
Okay. And your daughters are in Utah?
I have two in Utah, one in Colorado, and then one that's back east doing her master's program. But I think we'll eventually settle out west.
Okay, so you'll be closer to your family by being in California. Okay.
Yeah, much closer.
Okay. Yeah. So it's coming home almost.
It is, and again, it's a part of the country that I feel I feel very connected to. The west of the western part of the U.S. Was again where I grew up and where I've had all most of my professional experience. And um, but even that's an important part of it is for me. But I underestimated how important it was to my family to have me close to them. And as I evaluated the opportunity and spoke to them, it was clear that this was the right move.
So, as a destination marketing executive, do you feel like you can make an impact on the issues San Francisco are facing?
Yeah, I do, and I don't think it's just by nature of me as an individual or the organization of San Francisco Travel as a sole organization, but I firmly believe in the power of the visitor economy and what it does and how it impacts and creates a robust, vibrant local economy, especially when it's part of an economy that's diverse. And I think that it's again through that idea of the economic ambition, and we are our industry. We are to our major goals are to drive business, to drive growth in the economy, and do it in ways that are sustainable and connected to the ethos of a community and all those wonderful things, those buzzwords we talk about. But I am a firm and confirmed believer in the impact of the visitor economy and how it can be so impactful to the community's economy and thereby enabling so many other things. Again, social ambition is incredibly impactful, but you got to have economic ambition to make that deliverable.
There are some who say that San Francisco's problems are going to get worse before they get better. Did you keep that in mind when deciding upon accepting this role?
I think absolutely. I mean, I've been one that looks at things through many different lenses and with I think a lot of variables. I think that the way I've always looked at opportunity is one that I think has served me well. But I will say a couple things in this idea that it's going to get worse before it gets better. I don't think that's uniquely San Francisco. I mean, I think the issues of urban environments post COVID in this new reality of how the economies are righting themselves or how the economies are rebuilding post pandemic. San Francisco's problems are not uniquely San Francisco's, nor is the San Francisco experience monolithic. I can assure you, Andrew, that when I was there are areas of San Francisco that are a lovely experience to this day, and it is not as monolithic as is presented. I am, fortunate. My wife is she calls herself a recovering journalist. She spent 10 years as a journalist, and she says we don't ever cover the planes that land. You cover the planes that didn't land, and that's a dynamic that I think is important to recognize. That's not a criticism. That's just a comment. That's not commentary. But I think that there is a problem. There is a problem in San Francisco in areas that have been problematic for a long time, and some that are newer. I think our urban environments in the U.S. and in North America, we need to find better ways to have that, the social ambition that I've sort of alluded to, address some of these new problems. And so, fentanyl and the affordability and access to housing and the living environment, boy, those are not uniquely San Francisco. I can tell you, we experience them in almost every big city I've traveled to, and so yes, I am aware that the situation could get worse, but I'm also acutely aware that the situation is getting a lot better. There are things happening there. There is enormous leadership being shown by elected officials, by the citizens of San Francisco to make some really big, significant changes. I think there's issues in front of the Supreme Court in the state of California right now about homeless encampments and things that I think are going to be very beneficial to those who are struggling who don't have a place to live, but also beneficial to the communities.
What will success look like to you when you take that role? And
well, I don't think it's too different from how I would define success in here in Toronto. It's that the local citizens and people of the destination feel that the visitor economy is a vibrant, important part of their overall economy. That the organization that I work for, San Francisco, will be respected and recognize that it is one that understands the voice of the people who live there. That we're an overused word, that we're authentically representing the destination, that we're not out there creating marketing campaigns and social accounts that don't reflect and relate to the real experience of San Francisco. I think clearly, if you look at the reputation that San Francisco has had and does have, there's work that we need to do on meetings and events side. There's the impact of the Moscone Center and the impact of the easy way to define that as group business is important. And I think we're going to work really hard to make sure that we are presenting ourselves to the right groups and winning that business back in ways that will, again, position San Francisco in that role that it's had in a long time as being a leader in the meetings and events industry in North America. And I hope, more than anything, I hope that the people that live there and work there and play there feel that we're doing a great job representing their community. The thing I love about our industry is also the one that makes it sometimes the hardest. And we don't own anything and we don't manage anything. So for the most part, we are 100% a reflection of the communities and the products and services that are developed there. And I look to success in a way that relates to that, or the people we're representing feeling that we're doing a good job. And that's going to be a real important benchmark for me.
And not only is it important for meeting planners to be safe, to make sure their attendees are safe, but they need to feel safe. How will you make sure that happens?
I think doing a lot of what San Francisco is doing right now is working harder at getting more of the right types of public policy that allows them to ensure the streets are safe, and that there are places for those that don't have the housing and don't have the social services that they need. That's an important part of that, and we're going to do that by, making sure that the visitor economy is firing on all cylinders, and we're doing what our role is as a community to grow that part of our industry, and it is working very closely and being communicative and talking about when and where we do have problems, and talking about how we can be better communicators and how those problems are impacting our visitors, and how we can ensure that, as you said, it's not just are safe, but feel safe. And I think a lot of that is how the streetscape is addressed. And that's what I'm very excited about, being part of the team that is looking at new and creative ways to address the streetscape. And that was a very important part of the questions I was asking the team in San Francisco, and I was asking the elected officials that I was lucky enough to meet with. What are we doing to address that streetscape? Because, while I think I've shared with you, it's not a monolithic experience. Not every aspect of San Francisco is described by what is the predominant voice in the media right now. But there is that. There are those experiences, and we have to recognize them and find ways as a collective, not just say it's the city's problem or it's the police's problem, but as a collective to find out ways to make it a better experience by ensuring that streetscape can be managed in a way that makes it an experience that people want to experience.
Okay. What has been your biggest success in Toronto?
I think it's a success that I think I felt. I think a lot of success is luck, how you position, how you work things, but you got to have some luck to make it happen. I think coming out of the pandemic, we have been embraced by the economic development community here as a real important part of the overall vibrancy of the economy of Toronto. And I say lucky in that when we took 25 million visitors out of this community for the year of the pandemic, it was a different place. It didn't have the same vibrancy. It didn't have the same experience that people had come to know as Toronto. And Toronto is the most diverse city in the world. And that makes it a pretty special city in terms of what a visitor can expect. It's really easy for the visitor to see themselves here. The visitor, and it doesn't matter where you're from in the world or who you are, you can see yourself here. But when there are 25 million fewer people doing that on an annual basis, it's easy to see how the impacts just ripple through the economy. And so I think what we have been able to do is really show why and how the visitor economy is so important to a city like Toronto. And we don't have a ski hill or a beach or some of those things that tourism, I think loves and looks towards. This is a city that has an incredible food and beverage community, a city that has one of the most vibrant art and culture communities I've ever been a part of. And I think we were really able to connect the dots, how those parts of our industry are so important to the fabric that is the community of Toronto. Our industry and our ability to impact the economy, the recognition has skyrocketed. And that just helps do so many of the things. That helps us with better site inspections for group business. That helps us lobby for more efforts to get focused on the right type of product development. I'm a big believer in that we are part of the economic development community in the destinations we represent. And that's, I think, been such a success here in Toronto.
And then I guess you'll do that same thing in San Francisco.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would characterize the San Francisco community's view of tourism and travel a little bit higher up the scale because it's been such a dominant part of San Francisco for so long. I mean, there are many benchmarks and indexes that have the tourism economy, the travel economy, the biggest industry in San Francisco, bigger than the tech industry, bigger than some of the finance industry. And so I think it's been an important part. I think we've got to do is, I think, really reestablish that there is an authentic voice that is San Francisco, and we're going to make sure people remember what that is.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about you. Who are you and how did you get to be you? I mean, you're often labeled a visionary and Mr. Enthusiasm. Is that how you see yourself?
Well, I do take it as a compliment that people think I'm enthusiastic because I genuinely do love what I do, Andrea. I genuinely believe in what we do as an organization. And I think, I grew up in the hospitality industry. My dad was a general manager of a ski resort for 30 years. So I grew up, working as busboy, garbage attendant, you name it, working in the industry and was always so engaged and enthused by the transformational experience of a visitor, whether that was someone I was serving at a table or someone that I was skiing with or a group that we brought into the resort or whoever it was. I was just always, that sort of just excites me as a person. So I really love the idea of travel and how it affects people and what it does, and being a part of it has always been a big honor for me. So yeah, I can be really positive because I really, really do enjoy this. And I think it's a noble profession. And the visionary one's a little bit harder. I think how I would contextualize that comment is I've never been afraid of change, and I've always looked to sort of do things better. And by doing them better doesn't mean that the way they've been done was bad. That isn't what that means. And so I think change and looking forward has always come natural to me. I think part of that comes from my parents and the way they viewed the world. So I think some of that is sort of in my nature versus nurture DNA. But I will say that I've always been excited about talking about new things and new ways to look at things and new information. And one of the things I've loved about just the way that the data has changed in our industry, we're able to make so much better decisions because of what we know. And then why I'm so excited about something like predictive and generative AI is that it's just another tool to just keep us fresh and look what we're doing. And so I think the visionary element gets back, I think, a little bit to this idea that I really like being current and being fresh. And so whether that's in my music that I'm listening to because my 16-year-old daughter shared some new band with me or whatever it is, that I've always been one that I don't mind looking forward. And I really think I've been able to lean into that in my career.
Well, that's great. How do you explain to friends and family what you do?
That was a good one. I read that question. I was like, wow, that's an interesting way to ask that, because most time they say, well, what do you do? You sell hotel rooms? No, I really tell people that I'm in the sales and marketing profession. And what I do is, promote the destination where I'm lucky enough to call home to people who don't live here, and to try to bring visitors to the community we live in, to make an impact in our community and make the place where we live, where I work, a better place to live. And so I really relate it to sales and marketing functions. People always knew what I did when I was a general manager of a hotel or when I was a regional director of sales and marketing for a hotel. And I say it's not much different than that, but instead of a hotel with hallways and doors, my hotel has streets and bus stops and gas stations and grocery stores and retail stores. That it's just the same kind of thing. We're really promoting a destination for new people to come and experience it.
And what does it take to create a great event in a city that you're leading?
Well, I think first and foremost, content is what I think what makes any event great. And that event is a business event or a sporting event or a musical event. I think it's the content that really distinguishes the event. I've been to some really incredible events in some pretty crappy places. Some places you wouldn't say are, inspiring from a design perspective or whatever, but the content that was there, and in large measure, I think what makes a great event, the content and an event so great, is the people that are there. I think one of the reasons why face-to-face continues to be, and in my mind will always be relevant, is we are really, I think, at our best when we're sharing face-to-face and person-to-person. And I think that, that the element of content that is delivered by the people in the meeting, I think, is really, really important. And that doesn't mean the people have to be over 10,000 or, more than 50,000. It can be 5 people and have a really great event. But I think it's content that drives events. And I think that's what any event that you look at that is successfully growing or overcomes huge obstacles to be successful in the face of anything. It's the content that delivers and how it connects those people that are part of the event.
So you've been in Salt Lake City and Toronto and San Francisco. Can you explain to us the similarities and the differences as you see them between those 3 cities?
Yeah, I think the similarities, I think, are maybe harder to recognize, but I will say there's a very, very similar ethos around the impact of business events, the meetings and conventions industry. All 3 of the cities recognize it. They know that they are far more than just, an economic activity, that they are transformational. All 3 of these cities look at the meetings and events industry as being impactful in workforce development, in talent attraction, in creating bigger and better opportunities for all types of direct investment, especially foreign direct investment. I think all 3 of those cities have been really lucky to have a community that understands meetings and events are more than just about the money spent in your community. They have a long tail impact in the ethos of the community, and that's really, really important. I think a similarity that is maybe a little bit more relevant now for San Francisco than it has been historically. I think Salt Lake and Toronto have kind of been underdogs. You've got a city in Salt Lake that people have a lot of misperceptions about what it is, its impact. And I think Toronto is America's 4th largest city, the most diverse city in the world, 2nd largest this, 3rd largest that. It punches so far above its weight class in terms of its recognition in North America. So a little bit of an underdog theme there. And I think right now San Francisco struggles a little bit from that. They're kind of, they've been beat up. They've had a tough time of late in the media and in some real sort of foundational elements of that city have been rocked. So I think there's a little bit of a, we're kind of like not the underdog, but we're coming from a position of maybe not of strength right now. And I think that's been a really common theme in all the cities.
So it's almost like another underdog.
Yeah, there were elements about the questions I was asked, and there were answers that I gave that resonated with people that, oh, you understand what it means to not be like the top of the heap talking about where you are. And yeah, I understand that. I found that to be a real fun opportunity to kind of share with people elements of the destination they've either forgotten or didn't know, and elements that make people say, I gotta give that a shot.
And does that make success even that much sweeter when it is, like an underdog that you help bring back?
I think so. I mean, there were times where, not often, but times in Salt Lake where we were competing with San Francisco for a group. And when we won, I can sure tell you that was a really, really big moment of success. And, there are times when we have helped work with people who are, maybe taking their first foray into an international destination. So Toronto feels it's not, you have to have a passport, but it's still safe enough that, accessible enough to most people, and seeing people come and just be transformed. You talked about when we hosted Destinations International back in July of 2022. And I tell you, there was a lot of people who hadn't been here, who had never been to Toronto. And that idea of when they got here and they were like, wow, we heard you say it, but now we know it. And those are real moments of I think joy.
So would you say that was one of your most successful achievements during your stint with Toronto, getting DI in to showcase all the city has?
It was transformational in a lot of ways. It was our first international event post COVID. It was one of the first big citywides we had in the building after 2 years of closure. But I think where it got really beyond what I think people expected is it's never bad to hear from your peers and your competitors what a good time they had and how much, and again, how unexpected it was. And I think um, it did a lot for our psyche as an organization and for our board and all those people that felt it and were around it. When they saw so many people saying, wow, I just didn't know, or wow, I wish my city did X. And so I think on a lot of levels, it wasn't the biggest convention we've ever hosted, but it was really important at a time when we were coming back after COVID. And for 2 years, we had battled, getting over the idea that Canada's closed and, all these things that were still sort of it lasted a little bit longer in terms of our destination than other destinations. So it was a really important event for us.
Okay, so at the end of October, you leave Canada, you come back to the US. Recently, the San Francisco Travel Association reported a gain in hotel revenue of 30% when compared to 2022, and also projects hotel occupancy will increase by nearly 5% to 66.8%, which is still off. How do you plan to bring this number up?
Well, I think first and foremost, if you look at the story behind those numbers is we're not back to pre-pandemic levels of meetings and conventions. We have to get that number up. Moscone Center needs to become the building that it was pre-pandemic in terms of its contribution to the economy. So we're going to focus a lot on the group business and the meetings and event side, especially the citywide side. That has always been one of the most important parts of the impact of San Francisco travel, and that's going to be a big part of what we do. I think working very closely with the economic development community to remind people of the innovation and the creation that is part of the DNA of that city, and they need to be there for that as well. So continue to grow the appeal of San Francisco as a place for all types of industry, and I think that's going to be impactful. But I will say that first and foremost, we're going to focus on meetings and events and restoring the Moscone Center and the impact of citywide conventions.
Is there any talk about upgrades to the Moscone Center or renovations, or is it just going after marketing more so?
Well, I don't think it's just marketing. The center is in incredible shape. It's a gorgeous building. It is a really incredible building. I think what I've always loved about convention centers is that they are not just a building. They live as part of a neighborhood. And I think where I know the city is working on is the entire Yerba Buena experience, that whole complex. They're really working to make that a really good place to be in the city. So I think it's less about the building itself and more that streetscape and environment around the building, working very closely to really make that the experience that our meeting planners and our attendees want to be a part of.
And what is your vision for San Francisco in 5 years and 10 years?
Ooh, wow. Well, I want people to say that was like the best FIFA experience we've ever had, and that Super Bowl 26 was an absolute success. And I think talking about it in terms of how impactful and good the events are that we are a part of, I would really hope that people have a renewed appreciation for what San Francisco represents in terms of the cultural impact on who we are today as humans. There's been a lot of innovation and a lot of things that have come out of that Bay Area that are very impactful for our day-to-day lives. And I think that as we look to the future of how we're going to talk about the city, I will look back with a lot of success if people have that perspective of San Francisco. that this really is a city of innovation, a city of doing things differently, and doing things differently is a risk, and sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's bumpy, but you try to you learn from that, and you get up and move on. So I think that's what I'll look back, is that we've got a convention center that again is in its rightful position, hosting the types of events that make an impact. Again, not just an economic impact, but are making an impact in the future of the world. And that we have a community that really respects the visitor industry and what we bring to the city, and that people that are either flying through or have a story about San Francisco will connect it to something very positive. And even if it means they haven't been there, they'll still connect the sort of psyche of the city to something very positive.
Is there one event that you have in your mind that you're saying, oh, I'd love to attract that event?
I do think there's some events that would be, I think, well, I think that FIFA is going to be a big game changer for the region. I think that there's so much more to be done around the idea of sports and how we participate in those. But I also think there's some really important conversations that are a part of. I think there's cities around the world that are hosting great conversations on the climate, on the future of the economy, and I think San Francisco is the right kind of place for that. And there's some stuff being done by the UN or WHO, whoever it is. There's some really important conversations going on. I was in one in Amsterdam last year about the resilience of cities. I think there's a great one that goes on in Barcelona about smart cities. And I think there's some events like that aren't just big, large, international sporting events, but events that are about conversations that are, I think, would just click really well with what I know about San Francisco and what compels me about San Francisco.
Well, that's great. So I wanted to talk for a few minutes about big picture ideas. Overall, what are the biggest challenges you see facing the events industry?
Wow. Well, I think the biggest challenge we have right now is not trying to fall back in the old ways of, registration, attendance, general session, breakout sessions. I think the biggest problem is just we all want to get back to what life was like before the pandemic, but at the same time, our lives have changed so much we can't get back to doing life the same way we did pre-pandemic. And I'm not talking from a health perspective. I'm just talking about the enormous traction that technology has had, embracing AI, embracing so many things that are now, because of the pandemic, we just leapfrog years of sort of adaptation and reliance on these things. So I think it's one of the biggest concerns I have is that we as an event industry that we've always been willing to take risks and do things differently. I'm hopeful that we'll continue to do that at a time when everybody's striving to get back to something. We report numbers compared to this, and is attendance back to where it was then. So I think that there's a lot of people in our industry I'm really inspired by. They're trying to make sure we evolve as an industry. So I think it's that we need to make sure that we are using technology and embracing a lot of the things that sometimes appear to be disruptive to enhance and create a better experience for people who attend meetings, and making them more accessible. That's the thing that I think I'm the most excited about looking forward, is this technology. The influx of this technology is making it possible for more people to share in the content that is delivered at meetings. And you can't network very good on Zoom, but you can expand your knowledge of stuff on Zoom. And I think those types of things is how we look to create meetings that are more accessible to more people, because that content is then going to have a more impact. I think is important to look at what we're doing.
If you could magically change one thing in the event industry, what would it be?
Get rid of all single-use plastics.
No, that's great.
I think if we look at on the large scale event side, we have to, I really like leaders like Sheriff at PCMA when he is saying, we can't disconnect ourselves from the idea that, there are people that say no one should fly and we shouldn't travel, and that's going to create more harm than good. And I'm much more aligned with Sheriff, but there are many other ways that we can mitigate and manage and be stewards of our impact. And I think if we look at the trash that we generate as an industry, we need to be better at that. And that's everything from signage to giveaways to all the stuff that we still feel compelled to do, and get your bag with your little stuff stuffed in it. And I think there's a lot of things we can do that would decrease trash and decrease the impact on the environment in ways that the events industry has at its control and at its sole discretion. Because there's not city regulations, there's not federal regulations, there's not regulations of, any type of regulation is going to stop us from making less trash. We can do that. And I think there's one way to do that is really, really diminish the use of single-use plastics.
I mean, you're in Canada, I'm in the New York area. If it wasn't a wake-up call this summer that I'm standing in New York City surrounded by smoke from the Canadian wildfires, I don't know what is a wake-up call.
Yeah, and I think, it's hard to say, hard to connect the trash from a citywide commission to this, wildfires in Canada. But global warming has so many ways that it's impacted. But I really believe that if we could, as an industry, be leading the conversation about, kind of less is more, and it's reduce, reuse, and recycle for a reason. Recycle's third because it's the least effective way. Reducing or reusing is far more effective than recycling. And I think those types of themes are within our sole control. We can control that as an events industry. And that's what I would change first and foremost.
That's great. What is your advice for meeting professionals looking to advance their careers? Do you have any advice you can offer them?
Volunteer. Get engaged in the association. Get engaged in your local chapter of whatever it is. I look back at my career and I can say without a doubt, and I'm 100% committed to this, that I would not be in the position I'm in, or even have the positions I'm in, if I wasn't trying to give back and learn from my peers and the industry that I'm in. So I would say get involved in again, whatever part of that is. It may not even have to do with our industry, but get involved in a local organization that helps animals or children with disabilities or whatever it is. Get out in the communities and get connected and volunteer your time. You'll learn more and have more opportunities from doing it.
Who has had the biggest influence on your career?
I met a man by the name of David Kleiman at MPI in Nashville in the 90s. I was food and beverage director at a ski resort, and I had been asked because of a change in staffing to attend this trade show called Meeting Professionals International's World Education Congress in Nashville. I had no idea what those letters meant. I'd never been. And I went in and I sat down on a bus to go to the opening reception, had my name badge, had no idea what I was doing. And the person I sat next to introduced me to this man named David Kleiman, who was the incoming chair of the MPI's International Board of Directors. And he took an interest in me. And he gave me my first opportunity to volunteer at a international MPI committee level, and was always such a consummate event professional that he knew how to connect people and knew the power of connections. And without a doubt, that I never would have had that had I not been at that meeting. But also had I not followed the advice to get engaged and participate. So when he offered me the opportunity to join a committee, I did it, and I have never looked back.
Wow. What is your defining moment?
Well, for me, it's the birth of my 4 daughters. I think they have taught me more than I could ever have taught them. And I think my enthusiasm, in large measure, is watching them be the people that they are, but also learning from them. That they've taught me an enormous opportunity. They've just given me an enormous opportunity to look at things different. And so I think that to me is my most defining moment. Personally, I take the most pride in that. But I will say that as I look back at some of the things that I was able to do in Salt Lake with working with our largest client, the outdoor retailer group, through 6 mergers and acquisitions, and having that relationship, be there for 18 or 19 years, was really an important thing for me. And I think here in Toronto, we've been able to come together as a community with enormous leadership from our city and the rest of the community, and agreed on sort of what our story is. We called it the Narrative Project. And I will say it's some of the most incredible work I've ever seen a destination do. And I feel very honored to have been a part of that here.
What attributes and or qualities have you developed that have helped you become successful?
I think being enthusiastic, it's I think that's served me very well, and one that I think I look to with a lot of pride in how I've tried to really stay upbeat in times where it's difficult. I was a salesperson, so I know how easy it is to kind of hear no and start to believe that. But I also think that I'm one that does like to ask a lot of questions, and that's helped me really frame a way to look at the world around me that is important. I think asking questions and enthusiastically asking questions are traits that I lean on a lot.
What would be the one thing people would be surprised to learn about you?
How much I hate country music. I think people would be surprised. People are often surprised that I am trying to give the right context for this. I think that they're shocked that I'm not connected to I'm not connected to things. I think that shocks people because I do have certain things that are important to me. But I don't just have a lot of things. I don't have a lot of stuff. And I think that's always shocks people. That, is that all is in your office? Yep. That's pretty much all that's in my office. It's not a lot of stuff. And I think most of the times I'm here, most of the stuff is transitory. It's something that someone gave me that I'm going to pass on. And I think I'm much more I'm much more engaged. And this is why I was kind of like stumbling there. I like people a lot more than things. And I think that sometimes people can see what you do and the kids you have and how you sort of go about life and forget that I'm much more about an experience than I'm about a thing.
How do you define success?
Well, I define personal success by the people that you see on a daily basis that want to be with you and want to see you. I think that's really important. I've always tried to tell people, even in business, success to me is when I can text someone who I need to get in contact with, and they'll text me back. That they have a mutual respect. They feel that there's a connection there, and I think that's a lot how I would define success. Because then what I'm doing is perceived as being positive or making an impact, and someone will want to either answer my question or jump on board with the ask. And I think that, to me, if I get a call back, that feels successful to me.
Well, that's great. And also, you're not afraid to take risks, are you?
No, that's, I think, I think some of this is, again, comes from your lived experiences. And I've taken some risks and had some bad things happen, but most of the really good things in my life have come from taking a risk and doing something different.
Great. So we always end our podcast by asking, who should we have on the next one? And what is one question we should ask them?
Wow. Who should you have on the next podcast? Have you had Amy Calvert from the Events Industry Council?
A while ago, but that's
okay.
who you would recommend?
I just think as we talk about globalization and what that means, I think her organization is doing some incredible developing an incredible context around the global meetings industry and who we are as a global industry, not just a U.S. industry or North American industry, but really what's happening globally with the industry and how I just think that the last round of research that they've just released is, I think, really impactful, and I think more people need to hear it. And I think we are always best, I think, when we're reminded how much we are part of a larger ecosystem. And I will tell you that work they're doing is really great. And I would ask her about the global impact of meetings and events.
Will that be a focus when you get to San Francisco to attract global
Oh, yeah.
events? Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Will be a clear part of it.
Are there any questions that I didn't ask that you feel would be important to be included in our podcast?
No, I don't think so. No, it was a lovely time.
It was great. Well, I wish you all the best with your new position in San Francisco.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.